Yeah.
One of the largest things that I think that I've kind of been ruminating on in the past 10 months or so is, how much vulnerability and how much access does someone get from me? As someone who lives their life, open, I'm an emotional person, I wear my heart on my sleeve, as you know, and I have really been thinking, in this time, the time of ultimate introspect and perspective shift and whatnot for everyone. I have really been questioning that. And so when you asked me, would I do this? It's interesting. My initial reaction was oh, that feels invasive, right? And I was like, why don't I want to do it? And so I've been ruminating on that a lot. And something that I've really been thinking about during all of this is how much is too much and how little is too little, and why do I care about what that means for someone else when it's my own journey? And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean that in a, I'm constantly told throughout my life, growing up, really, protect yourself, don't let them see you cry, things from strong women, and as I've gotten older, I've learned that kind of armor can be helpful and beneficial in certain ways, and really, really damaging in others. And so it's just kind of this shifting perspective. And so all of that to say, while I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, I've had some very kind of large things, as we've all had, happen during the time of, I hate saying pandemic. I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine who he's changing it to every other P word. He's he talks about the platypus, the Panera bread, the pumpkin, anything. And quarantine is a clementine, which I just, it's just shifting out things. That has nothing to do with anything, but
that's fun.
It is, I was thinking about what do I want to talk about? And I think the largest thing for me right now that I've been getting perspective on, and how much access does someone get to me? I grew up with a single mom, and I've been very fortunate that she got a partner early on in my life, and so I've had a dad who adopted me, from an early age. But there's always been a question for myself. While I've grown up with two parents, I haven't really known anything about my biological father, other than a few things here or there, and none of them being the most, attractive qualities that you'd find in a person who you come from. No bashing, of course, but my parents never really, it was always honest, but sometimes you don't want to hear the truth, kind of a thing. So growing up, I was very loved and very supported, and for myself, I've always questioned that idea of where do I come from, where am I going, and who am I, right? Those things that we all kind of that we have in our life, So about halfway through the clementine process, being at home, I started really ruminating on that question, and some of our triggers, I say our, but everyone's having things, so I'm just trying to acknowledge that, I guess. But for me, specifically, I had some thoughts about my biological father. And I did a DNA test. I've been wanting to do Ancestry.com for a long time. And there was a sale, and so I finally got the spit tube right at the fucking beginning of quarantine, too. We hadn't even gone into lockdown here in Florida, because LOL, Florida's funny like that. But I got the spit tube right as people were getting COVID and everything, and I was like, wow, I just shipped out my spit during a pandemic, and to find out who I am. Talk about perspective, right? And I'd always known that I was 50% Polish. We've always known on my mom's side, she's 100% Polish. Like, I'm a Polish girl. But the other half of me, I've always like been very curious about. Part of me has always really loved the like mystery of not knowing. Like, I could be from Germany, I could be from here, there, you know. And I was like, I'm so curious. What am I? So I got my results back, and I used to remember like all of the exact specifics, but I'm Welsh, English, Irish, Scottish, Swedish, like 3% Swedish or something, and Polish, and like New American like settlers, like Pilgrim, like that's a certain type. I can't remember what they called it, but like early American settlers was also like that. I have people from that time, and with Ancestry you get matches from other people who have also taken it, and so naturally a couple people from my biological father's side clicked in, and we matched like first and second cousins and stuff. And there was a woman who like kind of looks like me in like 20 years kind of a thing. So it kind of got me like ruminating, and I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, well, you know, he's on Facebook, right? And like it's something that I had known, like my biological father was on Facebook, but I hadn't like looked since high school. And I feel like when I was younger, I really struggled with it, like sense of identity and everything. And then like I really ended up finding my own path through theater and who I am and everything. And I'm a strong woman, I know who I am kind of a thing. But there's always those questions. And I had just wrapped grad school during the platypus. And I was like, if I searched for him now, it would be on my terms. I'm almost 30 years old, and I would, what's the worst thing that could happen? You know, rejection. I've dealt with that many times now, and that's something growing up that I've had, you know, a lot of issues with, both as an actor and as a person. And I was like, I can do this on my terms. And so I found him on Facebook, and it became this really sort of fast-paced whirlwind of am I going to do this, and what does that mean for me? And so I wrote like a letter, a digital letter, because you know, and I sent it to him. I wrote it over the course of 3 weeks. And I'm kind of a rash person, like I kind of spontaneously will jump and whatnot, but I really took the time and sat with it, of, you know, how do I want to start? How do I want to introduce myself as an adult to the person who made a choice, you know, and caused so much trauma for myself and other people in my family. You know, for better or for worse, that sitting in this kind of suspended, like once I sent it, it was sent. And for a couple days I was sitting in this like suspension of what will happen. And I feel like that's kind of an amalgam of just like how quarantine has been for so many people living in this, like, so I decided to add fuel to the fire naturally. I thought it would be a really good idea. He ended up getting back to me, and I ended up meeting him during quarantine safely, wearing masks, distance outside. These are how I feel about quarantine. I like doing that. I'm still on the journey. And a lot has come up for me recently, because in the sense of coming back to this, how much access do you get? Without diving into like parts that I'm still working on for myself, and it's still an evolving process, learned a lot about where some of my when you meet someone who has your DNA and is of you but is not you, and there's similarities that are undeniable, and things like you're like, oh, this is where I come from. And for me, it has been this very kind of surreal experience, also very jarring, and the things that I have kind of suppressed for a lot of times. And so, when is the right time to accept an apology? When is the right time as a person, like personally, how much do you allow to release, and how much do you, that balancing act right now of healing and also still making sure that someone isn't going to make the same don't fool me once, fool me twice kind of a thing. And so that's just been something that I'm really been ruminating on right now, is how much access do you get? And especially, there have been certain boundaries that, at the beginning of our conversations, kind of I laid down, and they've been crossed a little bit, for better or for worse. And I've recently made the decision to kind of pull away until certain things are met, so that way I can have a healthier path moving forward in whatever way that is, whether he is a part of my life or not. And it's so interesting to me that I chose to do this journey, and that you came and asked me about this, because I was like, what do I have to say? I have a lot to say. We're all storytellers in our own rights, even if you're not an inherent performer. And the whole idea of being vulnerable and being open and telling things that are important to you, but also that others may shy away from sharing. I can hear my mom in my head going, oh my God, Al, I can't believe you shared that I can't believe you fucking shared that story this soon, with the internet, right? And that's something that I'm working on, in the sense of, at the end of the day, why does it matter? It's my story to tell, and if I choose to tell it in a way that I have control over, why is that detrimental to anyone? It's my story. If you don't like your part in it, then change your role. So that's really where I've kind of been living. And this question of how much access, and it feeds into everything right now, with our responsibilities to our friends and family while taking care of self. Not even during the platypus pandemic, in general, but especially now. How do we take care of self? How do we live vulnerably and honestly and courageously, and protect yourself at the same time? And that's a line I'm still figuring out.
It's powerful. It's powerful. It's strength,
I mean,
stepping into that.
Trying to. And so I didn't even decide until you asked me, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, well, this has been on my mind, and it's actually pretty crazy. I wrote kind of my it wasn't a fuck off letter by any means. It was a thank you, come to me when you're ready kind of a thing. You don't get access to me on these hiding social media platforms where you can watch me and do whatever without actually interacting with me. You no longer get access to me. If you want to be a part of my life, you know where to find me. Yeah.
That's scary, because there's this feeling of I've reached out, and then there's this relationship that I want, and that I may feel an obligation to because he's my biological father, but also knowing your self-worth.
Yes, and so much of my own journey has been wrapped up in validation by others, especially men, as you know, so many of us women deal with oftentimes, I feel, at least a lot of my friends and family members, because we all affect each other. Our impact and intention are not always in the same like vein. Regardless of how good our intentions are, the impact can be devastating sometimes. And so trying to figure out how to traverse and use the tools that I've learned and grown with over the time and still am trying to manage and deal with, how do I do that? But it was so crazy, like this question of trust of self, instead of receiving validation anywhere else, you know, kind of a thing. I have always been really reticent to trust myself for a lot of reasons, even just down to, you know, communicating, like saying, should I send this? Like, is this okay? Was this kind? Did it have what I wanted to say? You know, will you revise whatever it is? Like, but not just in an English paper setting, like in my own life. And so on, you know, 2 days before Christmas, I was waiting for my partner in the car at a freaking COVID test site. And mind you, I just got my new car like a month ago, right? Yeah, she's beauty.
Oh my gosh.
Just got her.
I did not.
It's my first like big girl lease purchase thing that I did on my own, which also was like a whole trust thing too, like how to trust yourself, like taking yourself to the big like 1980s like, you know, energetic like used car salesman. We're gonna try to swindle you, like fucking bullshit. You know, it's like, here we've got a lady, like let's, you know, really hi. But I was sitting there in the car waiting for him with a whole bunch of other cars, you know, like I parallel parked, and this is so off, but something about, there was something in the air, I don't know, but I was like, be careful with your car today. Like I was very paranoid about my car, and so I parked in a spot that I was like, okay, no one can park behind me or whatever, like boo, boo, boo. And as I'm writing this letter to my biological father, laying down my boundaries, and putting an end to this chapter as I've started it and finished it over the course of like 6 months, I got bumpered. Like this huge like Hemi truck like was trying to parallel park behind me, and as I'm like about to send it, like I would like lurch forward, and I'm like, you know, the world just kind of stops, and I'm like, oh my God, and this unmasked man starts coming towards me, and I'm like, no, get your mask on, you know, I'm like no, like I'm like freaking out, like my heart rate is already up, because when you're writing, like when you're writing something that has like a lot of heat behind it, and you're trying to also like be kind and clarify, and then your car gets hit, you're just kind of, it's a spooky time. I was very scared, and it's during a pandemic at a COVID test site, and this man is coming towards me, and I'm like, grab your mask, and he's like, what? Like, because he was very much like English as a second language, but we communicated, he got a mask, nothing happened, praise be. It was just like large, like, we love a good bumper. We love a good bumper. But it was just jarring, and all of that, like, hilarity and like whatnot aside, I was so jolted after that, because I was going to have someone else read my message to him. And after that, I was like, fuck it. I know what I want to say. I'm saying it in a kind way. I'm just saying what I need and asking for what I need, and respectfully not taking no for an answer on those things. So I sent it then. And I may never hear from him again. And that's a lot. But, and that's okay. I don't need that. I want that. I believe that love is not a finite resource. Time's a finite resource. There's only so many hours in the day. We can't get that time back. But love is not a finite resource. And I can have as many parents or parental figures that I want in my life, should they prove worthy. But if they don't, then they don't get access in that way.
I have just one question.
Mm-hmm.
looking back and thinking about your past self many chapters ago, like when you were 20, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self now after all the things that you've learned and the things that you're still processing and going through?
Trust yourself. 100%. The things that I would tell myself, though, are things that I've been told by others. You know, I think that there was such, for me, we always hear growing up the same things. Trust yourself, like, listen to your parents, like, learn from them. So I don't think I would have listened. It's so hard, too. What I think I would tell myself is read Brene Brown. Get a therapist, like a good one. Like, start that journey. I would start my journey of self-worth, self-validation earlier. Finding the right tools for me. If I had known that, because I've always, you know, the journey of self-growth and exploration and whatnot is ever changing. I think that if I could, I would go back and give myself the 2 tools that have really been the most productive in my journey, which is Brene Brown and Brene Brown's the best. She's the best. But yeah, you know, if there was a way to get through my skull and get into my brain and my every cell in my body to be able to just resoundingly say trust yourself and let it go, I would do that. But I also know that the things that we store in our muscles and our bodies and the memories that we hold on to, it really is something you have to learn on your own. So giving myself tools would be, because I like the journey that I've had. Something is itching my face.
Yeah, just like being able to go out there and like try things, having things work, having things fail, right? That experience, like not being afraid to get out there and to put yourself out there and learn.
Well, I feel like I've done that. You know, people always say like, oh, I regret, like, and I'm not saying, you know, that I've done it right.
Well, but you definitely put your skin in the game with a lot of stuff.
That's something I'm proud of,
Yeah.
is that I have lived and will continue to live unapologetically. I will apologize when I've done something wrong. However, something that I've always been really kind of saddened by when I hear is, oh, I really regret this. I really, I truly, I mean, I've not had an easy time in my life, but I've also been really blessed with some wonderful things, and I've had some really shit fucking things happen, as we all do. But I don't regret any of it thus far. And I think that's because I love who I am and who I'm becoming. I haven't always been there, and everything that has happened thus far, even though it's been very hard at times, I know I'm a strong person, I know I'm a good person, and I know that I am deserving of love and success. And I get to choose how that happens, and I will make missteps constantly, obviously. I have. But I don't regret them. Yeah.
Thank you.
I love cats.